Have you ever landed in a new country and realized the hardest part was not the language or the food, but the invisible tension you carried in your chest? And have you ever noticed how quickly the mind turns uncertainty into fear, even when you are doing your best to live respectfully and safely? Welcome back to the channel. Today we are stepping into a story about people living abroad under pressure, and the quiet spiritual work required to keep your mind from hardening when life feels unpredictable. We are using a single theme as our doorway: the live challenges some Chinese nationals may face while working or studying in Pakistan, and what those challenges teach us about karma as cause and effect, about wisdom under stress, about compassion without naivety, and about the kind of inner practice that protects your dignity when the outer world cannot be fully controlled. The first idea to hold is this: when you move across borders, you do not leave your mind behind. Your habits, your fears, your expectations, and your unresolved wounds travel with you. If you do not train the mind will interpret every unfamiliar signal as threat, and that becomes your suffering. The second idea is this: safety is not only a physical condition, safety is also a mental posture. You can take wise precautions without living in panic. You can remain cautious without becoming cruel. You can protect yourself while still practicing compassion. That is the middle path, and it is where destiny starts changing for the better. Let me tell you a story about a man named Chen Hao. Chen Hao did not choose Pakistan because he wanted adventure. He chose it because opportunity has a way of appearing in unexpected places. He was in his late 20s, trained in engineering, steady, serious, not the type to chase novelty. A company offered him a role on a project connected to infrastructure work. The pay was better than what he could get at home. The timeline was clear. The promise was simple: work hard for a few years, save money, return with a stronger foundation for the life he wanted. At least, that was the plan. The first night he arrived, he did not sleep, not because the hotel was loud, but because his mind would not stop scanning. Every sound felt like information. Every movement in the hallway felt like a warning. He had read stories online, some accurate, some exaggerated, some shaped by fear. He tried to tell himself he was safe. He tried to tell himself he was being irrational. But the body did not care about logic. The body cared about uncertainty. And uncertainty, when paired with responsibility, can feel like danger. On the second day, a colleague named Li Wen met him in the lobby. Li Wen had been in Pakistan for 2 years. He walked with a calm pace that suggested he had learned the rhythm of the place. He smiled easily. He greeted staff in simple local phrases. He seemed grounded. Chen Hao asked him directly, "Is it really dangerous here?" Li Wen did not give the easy answer. He did not say yes to scare him. He did not say no to comfort him. He said something wiser: "It is a real place with real people. Like anywhere, there are risks, and there is kindness. The danger is not only outside. The danger is also what fear does to your mind if you let it run unchecked." That sentence sounded spiritual, but Li Wen was not preaching. He was speaking from experience. When you live abroad, fear can become a constant companion. If you keep feeding it, you start living inside a narrow tunnel. The tunnel becomes your world. You stop seeing people as people. You start seeing them as symbols of threat. Then you create more distance. More distance creates more misunderstanding. More misunderstanding creates more tension. That is karma in motion. Not cosmic punishment, but the chain reaction of the mind. Chen Hao wanted practical advice, not philosophy. So Li Wen gave him practical advice too. He talked about routines. about knowing which areas were safer, about respecting local customs, about not flashing wealth, about keeping a low profile, about being polite and patient in public spaces. But then Li Wen added something that surprised Chen Hao. He said, "Your best protection is not only your schedule and your security plan. Your best protection is your inner discipline. If you panic, you will make poor choices. If you stay steady, you will see clearly." Steady, clear. Those words became Chen Hao anchor for the first month. The project site was not a glamorous place. Dust, machinery, long hours, rules that sometimes felt unclear. The local team members were skilled, proud of their work, but also wary at times. Chen Hao could feel the gap. Different languages, different assumptions, different humor, different boundaries. Even eye contact felt different. On the first week, a small misunderstanding happened. Chen Hao asked for a tool to be moved to a different location. He spoke in English, using the direct tone he used at home. A local worker named Amir heard him unfrowned. Amir responded with something sharp. Chen Hao did not understand the words, but he understood the energy. Instantly, Chen Hao's mind tried to interpret it. He is hostile. They resent us. We are not welcome. The mind loves quick stories. Quick stories give the illusion of control. If I know the story, I know what to do. But quick stories are often wrong. Li Wen noticed and stepped in. He translated calmly. Amir was not angry about the request. Amir was upset because the tool had been moved 3 times already and no one had explained the plan. He felt like people were ordering him around without respecting his time or safety. In that moment, Chen Hao realized something uncomfortable. He had assumed hostility where there was actually frustration about communication. This is the first spiritual lesson of living abroad. The mind fills gaps with fear. So Chen Hao did something new. He walked over to Amir, looked him in the eye, and with Li Wen's help, said he was sorry for not explaining. He thanked Amir for the work and asked how they could make the workflow clearer. Amir's expression shifted, not instantly friendly, but less defensive. He nodded and offered a suggestion. The tension softened. That small moment mattered more than Chen Hao realized, because it showed him how karma is shaped by intention. If he had reacted with ego, the relationship would have hardened. If he reacted with respect, the relationship opened. Respect is not weakness. Respect is wisdom. Over the next months, Chen Hao learned the real challenges were layered. There were practical challenges, bureaucracy, paperwork that moved slower than he expected, supply chains that shifted, power outages that interrupted plans, a constant need for flexibility. There were social challenges, being watched sometimes, being asked questions he did not know how to answer, being associated with politics he had no control over, feeling like his face represented a whole country rather than one person trying to do a job. There were psychological challenges, loneliness, the ache of missing home, the exhaustion of living in a place where every small errand required extra alertness, the fatigue of translating not only language but culture. And there were deeper spiritual challenges, the temptation to become suspicious, the temptation to harden, the temptation to retreat into a bubble and stop seeing the humanity around him. This is where the story becomes about awakening, not geography. Because the external challenges are different for each person, but the internal challenge is universal. When you feel unsafe, you have 2 options. You can narrow your heart and call it protection, or you can sharpen your wisdom and keep your heart soft. Soft does not mean naive. Soft means human. Sharpened wisdom means boundaries. preparation, and alertness without paranoia. Chen Hao struggled with this balance. One day, there was a security incident in a nearby area. Again, no sensational details here, just the reality that uncertainty rose. The company sent a message with new restrictions. Movement was limited. Staff were told to stay in certain zones. Suddenly, Chen Hao's world became smaller. He felt panic rising, not the dramatic panic of screaming, but the slow panic of a mind that cannot relax. The mind started thinking in loops. What if something happens? What if I cannot get out? What if I made the wrong decision coming here? That night he called his mother. He tried to sound calm, but his voice shook. His mother heard it immediately. She did not scold him. She did not demand he come home. She said something simple. "My son, when the world feels uncertain, you must return to what you can control." Chen Hao asked, "What can I control?" His mother said, "Your actions, your honesty, your discipline, and your kindness. Fear will try to steal those from you. Do not let it." That sentence sounded like old wisdom. It reminded Chen Hao of teachings he had heard as a child but never valued until now. It was not about religion. It was about inner cultivation. So he started a practice. Every morning, before checking messages, he sat for a few minutes. He watched his breath. He watched his thoughts. He did not try to force calm. He simply observed. When fear thoughts arose, he named them quietly. Fear is here. Then he returned to breath. This might sound too simple, but simple is powerful when repeated. Repetition is how karma is built. The same is true for freedom. Freedom is built through repeated returns. After a week of this practice, he noticed something. The fear did not vanish, but it became less controlling. He could still take precautions, but he did not spiral as easily. He could still respect risk, but he did not interpret everything as doom. He also noticed something else. When he was calmer, he treated local people differently. His voice softened. His eyes stopped scanning like a weapon. He began greeting people more naturally. He began noticing small kindness he had previously missed. A shopkeeper who remembered what he bought. A driver who offered him water in the heat. A co-worker who helped him pronounce a local word correctly and laughed with him, not at him. These small moments are how the mind heals its own prejudice, not through slogans, but through lived human contact. But the story is not romantic. Challenges continued. A co-worker named Zhang Rui became bitter. Zhang Rui had been there longer and had seen more tension. He stopped leaving the compound unless necessary. He mocked local customs. He spoke about people as if they were obstacles. He said everyone outside was dangerous. Chen Hao understood where it came from. Fear plus isolation creates bitterness. Bitterness feels like strength because it gives you certainty. If I label everyone as bad, I do not have to face ambiguity. But certainty built on hatred is a prison. Chen Hao tried to talk to Zhang Rui gently. He said, "I understand being cautious, but do you notice how angry you are all the time?" Zhang Rui snapped back. "Anger keeps me sharp." Chen Hao did not argue. He simply asked one question. "Does your anger help you sleep?" Zhang Rui went quiet. He looked away. That is the real test. A strategy that keeps you alive but destroys your mind is not a good strategy long term. Wisdom is finding a way to be safe and still be whole. Chen Hao also met someone who changed his view. A local supervisor named Farah. Farah was firm, organized, and direct. She did not treat Chen Hao like a foreign prince. She treated him like a colleague. She insisted on standards. She pushed back when the foreign team tried to rush processes without understanding local constraints. At first, Chen Hao found her intimidating. Then he respected her. Then he began learning from her. One afternoon, they were discussing a scheduling conflict. Chen Hao felt frustration rising because the timeline was tight. He wanted to push harder. Farah listened and then said calmly, "You are trying to force time. Time cannot be forced. You can only work with it." Chen Hao sighed and said he felt pressure from headquarters. Farah nodded. Then she said something that sounded like a spiritual teaching. Pressure is real, but rushing without clarity creates harm. Harm always comes back, maybe not as punishment, not as consequences. So we do the right thing first. Harm always comes back. That is karma in plain language. Farah was describing cause and effect. If you cut corners, you create risks that will return. If you disrespect people, you create resistance that will return. If you pretend things are stable when they are not, collapse will return. So Chen Hao began practicing a new leadership style. He became more transparent. He explained why asks mattered. He listened to local feedback. He asked questions instead of assuming. He still held standards, but he held them with respect. This improved the work environment, but it also did something deeper. It improved his inner state, because resentment often arises when you fight reality. When you stop fighting reality and start working with it, your mind becomes less tense. Now, we need to talk about a delicate point. When people discuss challenges for foreign nationals in any country, it is easy for the conversation to slip into stereotypes, blame, or fear-mongering. That is not wisdom. That is delusion. Wisdom is recognizing complexity. A country is not one thing. A place is not one story. People are not one category. There can be real security concerns and also real hospitality. There can be political tensions and also ordinary neighbors who simply want to live. There can be misunderstandings on both sides. And when you are the outsider, your responsibility is to fold. First, protect yourself and your team through practical caution. Second, protect your mind from becoming poisoned by prejudice, because prejudice is the quiet pollution that can follow you back home. Even if you physically leave, it becomes your worldview. It shapes how you treat future strangers. It shapes what you believe about humanity. It shapes your destiny. In Buddhist terms, hatred and fear are mental toxins. They do not only harm others, they burn the person who carries them. You can take precautions without carrying hatred. This is the spiritual upgrade. Chen Hao learned this lesson the hard way when something small happened. He was at a shop buying groceries. A child stared at him and whispered to a parent. The parent looked at Chen Hao with curiosity, not hostility. Chen Hao's mind, tired from weeks of tension, interpreted it as threat. He stiffened. His face became cold. He rushed outside. He felt his heart pounding. He realized he had reacted to curiosity, like it was danger. He stood on the sidewalk and breathed. He felt embarrassed. Then he remembered his practice. Name it. Fear is here. Then he asked, "What is the wise action now?" The wise action was not to lecture the child. The wise action was not to pretend nothing happened. The wise action was to soften. So he went back in. He smiled gently at the shopkeeper, paid calmly, and left at a normal pace. The child looked again, then smiled. The parent nodded politely. Nothing dramatic. But the karmic loop shifted. He did not let fear train him deeper into hostility. This is how awakening looks in real life. Small corrections. Over time, Chen Hao began building a community of practice with a few colleagues. Not a religious group, just people who wanted to stay mentally healthy. They agreed on some simple habits. They would not feed rumor storms unless they had verified information. They would check on each other's emotional state, not only work performance. They would take walks in safe areas to keep the body moving. They would learn a few local words to reduce distance. They would practice gratitude for small kindness. They would also keep boundaries with online content that amplified fear. Again, no lists needed in your life, but you get the idea. The point is practice. Practice changes karma. Karma changes destiny. Then a new challenge arrived. A conflict between foreign staff and local staff over a misunderstanding about pay and responsibility. It could have escalated into anger. Chen Hao was asked to mediate. He felt nervous. He was not a natural diplomat, but he had been training his mind. He knew one principle: start with respect. He met with both sides. He listened longer than he spoke. He summarized what each side was feeling to show he understood. He asked what outcome would feel fair. In the end, the solution was not perfect, but it reduced tension. People felt heard. Chen Hao realized something. Safety is not only created by walls and guards. Safety is also created by trust. Trust is created through fairness, clarity, and respect. That is a spiritual insight and a practical one. Months later, his contract period neared its end. He could return home with savings and a stronger resume, like he planned. But he carried something else now. He carried humility. He no longer believed he could control life through planning alone. He carried compassion. He no longer saw entire groups as threats. He carried wisdom. He understood that fear is a signal, not a leader. He carried practice. He knew how to sit with discomfort without becoming cruel. On his last week, Farah invited the team to a small gathering. Simple food, simple laughter. People shared stories of the project. People teased each other gently. People took photos. Chen Hao looked around the table and felt a strange warmth. He had come expecting only hardship. He was leaving with a more complicated truth. He had experienced tension and also kindness. He had felt fear and also belonging. He had been cautious and also open. That complexity was the real gift, because simplistic stories create prejudice. Complex truth creates wisdom. Now, I want to bring this story directly to you. Maybe you are not living abroad, but you might be living in a place where you feel like an outsider. A new school, a new neighborhood, a new social circle, a workplace with a different culture, even a family you married into. The external details change, but the inner lesson remains the same. When you are the outsider, your mind will try to protect you by labeling everything. This person is safe. This person is dangerous. This place is hostile. This place is friendly. Sometimes those labels help. Often they oversimplify. So what do? You practice the middle path. You take wise precautions without living in constant panic. You stay respectful without being naive. You set boundaries without hatred. You remain compassionate without ignoring reality. You keep returning to your breath so the nervous system does not hijack your mind. This is the path of awakening in everyday life. Now, a personal resonance. I have seen people live abroad and become kinder because they learned humility and saw how human beings are complicated everywhere. I have also seen people live abroad and become more bitter because fear became their identity. The difference was not the country. The difference was what they practiced inside themselves. If you practice suspicion daily, your heart becomes a locked room. If you practice awareness daily, your heart becomes a steady home. Both are forms of protection. Only one is free. So, if you are in a season where you feel uncertain, let uncertainty become your teacher, not your jailer. Let it teach you to return to what you can control: your actions, your discipline, your compassion, your honesty, your practice. Because the world will always have risks, but your mind does not have to become a battlefield. Thank you for being here with me today. I want you to share your thoughts and stories in the comments. Have you ever lived somewhere unfamiliar and noticed your mind changing in ways you did not expect? And what helped you stay wise instead of fearful? If you want more long-form storytelling that turns real-life pressure into lessons about awakening, wisdom, karma, compassion, practice, and destiny, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and leave a comment so this community can grow. If membership support is available and it fits your situation, it helps keep these deep conversations alive. Until next time, stay careful, stay kind, and remember that the strongest protection is a mind that can see clearly without hardening.